the Delmarva Almanac. Each week we connect you to the best of Delmarva. Like other almanacs, our aim is to tell you a little bit about our past, our present, and events in the near future. I'm your host, Dana Kester McCabe. Gardeners are always looking for ways to attract pollinators like bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. Not only to help their gardens grow, but to be a part of helping their community generally have a more sustainable ecosystem. Growing native plants is no longer a new trend. It's an established and well-liked approach for many gardeners. Our local cooperative extension offices have all kinds of information that can help us create a garden that not only gives a great deal of pleasure to look at and smell, but can actively help nourish and repair the environment. I contacted Carrie Murphy at the Delaware Cooperative Extension about using native plants, and via email, she suggested that gardeners should think holistically. Before picking out any plants, we need to think about the entire system that supports them. So first things first, Carrie recommends that you get your soil tested so you know what type of soil you have and what needs to be done to improve it. Usually this can be done with compost. Armed with this knowledge, you'll be able to choose plants that will be more likely to flourish. Next stop is a nursery or garden center that specializes in native species for this region. But a great way to buy plants and get expert advice is to go to one of several native plant sales held by local environmental groups. I recently spoke to Kate Patton, Executive Director of the Lower Shore Land Trust, about their sale and why native plants are so important.
When we first started doing our native plant sale 8 or 9 years ago, it was really about a fundraiser, but it's become so much more than just our fundraiser. As a matter of fact, our regular sale that was one day now has become more of a celebration that lasts over multiple weeks. As a matter of fact, almost 2 months. So, for example, what we just initially thought about for native plants and the importance of, having some plants that were accustomed to this area, that maybe grew better in this area, their conditions might have been better. We realized that there's this symbiotic relationship between the plants and the animals. So we work now with other professionals that are really experts in the field to educate ourselves and the people that care about this, and hopefully, find some new interest in people that will care about this and bring it back home to their own house.
Kate says they recently held a wetland pond workshop to tell people about the benefits of having vernal ponds. These are small pools that form mostly during the wet spring season in low spots before disappearing for the summer.
I've always wanted to have a pond personally, but right now it's just not possible, so maybe if I can encourage others. And you think, well, what's a pond have to do with native plants? Well, it has a lot to do with native plants and the native critters, the amphibians, the birds, the butterflies, the other pollinators. So if you think about it, this area had a lot more ponds, vernal pools historically, that were drained for farming and development. And what we're finding out now is that these areas really did so much more than just have a wet marsh or a wet area. It not only provided important areas for water quality, because that filters the water coming off of the land, but it provided habitat for amphibians like those wonderful little frogs and critters. But these vernal pools that were so much a part of this area have not completely disappeared, but they have disappeared. And so what we were talking about at this workshop was that, we can do these on our own properties. Many of us have in our backyard some indentations in the ground, and we can go ahead and foster that little pool so we can bring this habitat in.
You're listening to the Delmarva Almanac. I'm Dana Kester McCabe, and we're talking about native plants with Kate Patton, Executive Director of the Lower Shore Land Trust.
So I don't know if you're familiar with Doug Tallamy from University of Delaware, but he is phenomenal. We had him speak at one of our earlier programs about 6 years ago, when he had just written this book called Bringing Nature Home, How Native Plants Sustain Wildlife in Our Gardens. The man is amazing. He really talks about how, our suburban, developments have went on this track probably along the same time that, we had this love affair with the car. We reduced our walkability around towns and created this suburban sprawl. And we decided that we were going to create these manicured lawns and landscapes, and we went with a lot of ornamental shrubs. Well, he tells this great story about how our neotropical birds are migrating back, and they're flying over suburbia, and they can't find a thing to eat. And here they're coming back to nest and have their babies and young before they fly back to, South America. And they don't have anywhere to live, so we've lost many of these bird species. But he's so positive that he reminds us that we can do something about it. We can change that just by planting native plants in our backyard. We do have our sale coming up. That's going to be May 9th, Mother's Day weekend at the Ward Museum. The Ward Museum is amazing too. I love them. They have, over the last decade, really developed their campus landscaping as a native kind of sanctuary. It's not just providing food and forage for our pollinators, our honeybees, our native bees, and some of our migrating and birds that live here, but they're really beautiful. And our native plants, if you plant them right, are going to bloom from March, when our pollinators really start needing them, all the way practically till November. It's very exciting.
Kate says it's important for gardeners to learn all they can about native plants, since some varieties touted as native are actually hybrids, which do not always provide the same benefits as the real deal. At the Lower Shore Land Trust sale, visitors can choose from over 60 varieties of native plants, consult with master gardeners, and check out a live beehive courtesy of the Lower Eastern Shore Beekeepers Association. The Maryland State Parks Scales and Tails program will be there with kids' activities and live wildlife. Another interesting event hosted by the Lower Shore Land Trust is a seed saving program, which will be held on May 28th with Mark Gormel from the Brandywine Nature Conservancy. Visit our website, delmarvaalmanac.com Living, for links to these activities and several other native plant sales, along with other home and garden events coming up across the peninsula. We'd like to thank our community partners, the Friends of Delmarva Public Radio, the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore, and underwriters EatDrinkBuyArt.com for their help in bringing this program to you, our audience. Our theme music was provided by Brightside Studio. This show has been a Moonshell production. Thanks for listening. Until we meet again, may the rhythms and tides of Delmarva bring you good fortune.